There is a cutting board that has outlived every season it has known. It sits not in a museum, nor in some guarded antique collection, but in the corner of a working kitchen where the steam from the evening soup still rises. The wood has darkened so deeply that some call it black, though those who have touched it know the color is not age, but absorption. Over 47 springs, 47 summers, and the same number of autumns and winters, this board has received the weight of knives that have sliced roots, herbs, fruits, and the flesh of animals raised on the same soil where the tree that became this board once grew. The surface tells a story that cannot be read like a book. It must be tasted, or at least imagined, through the nose. If you press your palm flat against the center, where the deepest groove runs, you might feel the ghost of a squash quartered in the autumn of 1978. You might sense the garlic that stained a particular corner during a wedding feast in the summer of 1985. This is not sentimental fantasy. This is the logic of wood that refuses to forget. Long before our kitchens became places of stainless steel and bleach, the cutting board was an archive of the household's entire edible life. It kept no written records, but it held every juice, every acid, every droplet of animal fat that passed across its grain. In the highlands of Japan, such boards are called manaita, and the oldest ones are treated not as tools, but as elders. A chef in Kyoto who inherited his grandmother's hinoki board once told a researcher that he could taste the miso from her kitchen simply by breathing near the wood on a humid day. And here is the beautiful part. Science has confirmed what grandmothers always knew. Wood, unlike plastic or glass, possesses a natural antimicrobial property that does not kill bacteria by poisoning them, but by trapping them in its porous structure and dehydrating them until they perish. A study published in the Journal of Food Science in the early 1990s found that wooden cutting boards actually reduced bacterial populations within minutes of contamination, while plastic boards allowed the same bacteria to survive overnight. The very thing that makes wood appear dirty is the mechanism of its cleanliness. But consider this: the same porous grain that traps bacteria also traps memory. Every lipid, every essential oil, every pigment from a beet or a turmeric root seeps into the wood fibers and polymerizes over time. The board cures like a living resin. What you call grime is actually a layer of transformed flavor that no amount of scrubbing can fully remove. A board used for 30 years to chop onions becomes, in a very real chemical sense, an onion itself. Not the fresh onion, but the ghost of every onion that ever wept upon its surface. That idea alone might make you look at your own cutting board differently. If you want to keep uncovering stories hidden in everyday objects, stay with this channel and tell me in the comments, what is one ingredient you suspect your own board remembers most? The one whose ghost lingers in the grain. Stay with me here, because this is where the story of the board and the story of the family become the same story. In a small village in the mountains of Nagano, there is a household that has passed down the same cutting board through 5 generations. The board was hewn from a single block of wild cherry in the winter of 1849. The eldest daughter of the household told an oral historian that she learned to slice daikon by watching her great-grandmother's hands move across the board's worn center, and that the board seemed to guide the knife when her own hands were uncertain. If you have ever scraped a kitchen surface and wondered what flavor you were washing away, you know the quiet guilt of erasing a meal's ghost. That feeling is not irrational. It is the recognition that the board has become a counterpart to the hand that works upon it. The knife does not cut alone. The board receives, and in receiving, remembers. Before we uncover what this board remembers from that Nagasaki kitchen in the autumn of 1849, stay with me. Let us explore what science says about the layer you cannot see. The surface of an old wooden cutting board, when examined under an electron microscope, reveals a landscape of tiny valleys and ridges. These are not just the scars of knives. They are the fossilized impressions of countless meals preserved in the wood, like the rings of a tree. A researcher at the University of Kyoto analyzed the residue from a 150-year-old cedar board used in a traditional ryokan. The analysis detected traces of sea bream, persimmon, soba, and a specific variety of mountain yam that is no longer cultivated. The board was not merely a surface. It was a menu of meals that spanned the Meiji, Taisho, Showa, and Heisei eras. The wood had become a chronicle of Japanese culinary history, written not in ink, but in oils. If this made sense instantly, it is because you already knew. Some people hear this and ignore it. You are not that person. You have felt, even without knowing the science, that the most seasoned board in your kitchen held something more than the last meal. You have sniffed the wood after washing it and caught a sweetness that did not come from soap. So if modern hygiene screams, wash it, and ancient grandmothers whispered, keep it, which side carries the flavor? Write this in the comments. At what point did this start feeling personal? For some, it happens the moment they realize that the board they inherited from their own grandmother holds the ghost of her hands. For others, it is when they understand that every scrub to bare metal or bare wood is an act of erasure. Now let us talk about how the board knows the seasons. In spring, the juices of wild garlic and young bamboo shoots seep into the grain. The wood absorbs the sharpness of new growth, the bitterness of the first greens. In summer, the board holds the sweetness of ripe melons and the acid of tomatoes. And these sugars react with the wood's natural tannins to create a subtle darkening. Autumn brings the fat of roasted meats and the earthiness of mushrooms, and the wood becomes richer, oilier, deeper in hue. Winter is the season of roots and preserves, and the board absorbs the dense, concentrated flavors of things stored for the cold months. The board does not clean itself. It must be maintained, and the maintenance is itself a ritual. A hot water rinse, a gentle scrape with a bamboo spatula, a drying in the shade. No soap, no bleach, no dishwasher. The seasoning of a cutting board is a slow act of devotion, repeated daily for decades. The board rewards this devotion by becoming more itself with every passing year, more saturated with the identity of the kitchen it serves. Notice what happens next. The board begins to influence the food. A carrot sliced on a board that has known 50 years of onions tastes subtly different from a carrot sliced on a board that has known only plastic. The volatile compounds that remain in the wood transfer in minute quantities to the fresh food. This is not contamination. This is continuity. The board connects the present meal to every meal that came before it, weaving a flavor that cannot be replicated by any recipe. Think about the last meal you prepared on a surface that had known years of use. Did it taste different? Save this video to revisit the science behind that feeling. And in the comments, write the name of one dish you would want your board to remember for the next 100 years. There is a pot that has not been washed in 40 years. And there is a board that has not been stripped in 100. They sit in the same kitchen. Two silent elders who witness the daily ritual of transformation. The pot simmers. The board waits. Together they perform an alchemy that no modern appliance can imitate. And this is the detail most people miss. The board does not only remember the food, it remembers the hands. The oils from human skin seep into the wood over years of contact. The board holds the chemical signature of the grandmother who gripped its edge while slicing, of the child who learned to chop under her watch, of the stranger who once visited and left a trace of their own skin on the surface. The board is a record of human presence, a document of touch. In Korea, the traditional cutting board called the dokdae is often passed down as a family heirloom. An oral historian recorded the story of a woman in Jeju who could identify which of her ancestors had used the family board simply by smelling it. The board had absorbed the distinct body chemistry of each generation, and the woman could distinguish her great-grandmother's scent from her mother's. The board was not just a tool. It was a genealogical archive written in oils and memory. Every time you scrub a pot to bare metal, you erase a lineage. If you believe some pots deserve to keep their ghosts, share this video. Let others know that grime can be wisdom. And if you ever find a board that has not met the soapy sponge in 50 years, listen closely. It may have a story worth tasting. Subscribe with Miso, and let us keep the old recipes alive together. Because the story of the cutting board is not really about the board. It is about the decision to let memory linger where it belongs. The board that has tasted every season does not judge the cook. It receives the knife, absorbs the juice, holds the flavor, and waits for the next meal to add its layer. It is the quietest archive in the kitchen, and the most faithful. And so, when you stand before your own cutting board tonight, consider what it has witnessed. Not merely the meals, but the mornings of quiet preparation, the evenings of rushed chopping, the hands that paused mid-slice to wipe a tear or answer a phone. Every mark on its surface is a moment frozen in wood. A tiny fossil of a life lived through the ritual of feeding. The board does not ask to be revered. It asks only to be used. To receive the next onion, the next carrot, the next piece of fish that will add its trace to the accumulated wisdom of the grain. It does not demand that you stop washing it. It simply hopes that you will stop scrubbing its memory away. There is a quiet dignity in being the surface upon which a family's entire culinary life is built. The board does not boast. It does not seek the spotlight of the stove or the glory of the serving platter. It waits, flat and patient, accepting the knife's edge and the cook's fatigue with equal grace. And in that waiting, it becomes the truest archive of all. An archive written not in paper or digital code, but in the language of oil and juice and human touch. A language that cannot be read with the eyes, but only with the nose and the tongue and the heart. A language that says, everything that was ever prepared here still remains, in some small, transformed way. The board remembers, and because it remembers, so do you.